So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco. And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned because we didn't know at the time whether I was going to have an opponent in my re-election race. And we run around with these signs, build more schools, less jails. Build more schools, less jails. And we walk around everywhere. Build more schools. We protest. Build more schools, less jails. Put money into education, not prisons. There's a fundamental problem with that approach in my. You want to talk about North Korea, real threat in terms of nuclear arsenal, but what does he do? He embraces Kim Jong-un, a dictator, for the sake of a photo op.
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California.
You know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me. And that little girl was me. And that little girl was me.
Folks, I want you to imagine that give it 2-3 years from now, you're at a convention of the Democratic Socialists of America, or you're at a convention of the Communist Party USA, or you're at a convention of the Socialist Party, or just some leftist organization. They're having a convention. There's you and a few hundred other people in the room, and all of a sudden, the doors are kicked open, and SWAT teams pour in with guns in your face. Everyone's getting on the floor, everyone's being arrested, everyone's being dragged away. You end up being charged for, disrupting national unity, for promoting misinformation, right? You end up being taken away to jail. That could happen if Kamala Harris becomes president of the United States. It sounds pretty wild, doesn't it? Sounds pretty far off. Sounds like something you would never expect. But I'm telling you about the facts. Kamala Harris is deeply, deeply lacking in any sense of morality, in any sense of rule of law, in any sense of right and wrong. Kamala Harris has a personal vendetta against socialists. She has a personal vendetta against Marxism. She has a personal vendetta against African American men, against black men. Kamala Harris is very, very dangerous. And I'm going to tell you why. Folks, Kamala Harris was born in 1964. Her mother is Shamala Goplin. Shamala Goplin is a cancer researcher in Berkeley. Her father is Donald Harris, a Marxist economist, a college professor who writes from a Marxist perspective, born in Jamaica. Her parents were involved in the civil rights movement, marching, protesting for civil rights. They got married. Kamala Harris was born. We don't know what happened to Kamala. We don't know what happened to little Kamala, to the child Kamala. We don't know. I mean, we know her parents divorced, and we know that she is now estranged from her Marxist father. The two of them do not speak to each other. He has denounced her. He's called her beholden to her donors. She never references him, and the two of them are not on good terms. Now, what happened to Kamala? Right? Was her father physically abusive to the mother? Was her father physically abusive to her? We don't know. Kamala faced some other hardships in her childhood. As she has made people very, very aware, she was one of the first dark-skinned children to be bused into an integrated school in Berkeley. And that was not a fun experience in the mid-'60s, right? And she probably faced racial slurs. She talks about when she would see her father and stay with her father in Palo Alto, California, that the neighbors wouldn't let her play with the kids because she was black, she was dark-skinned. So she experienced quite a bit of hardship. We know that. Regardless of her background, we know that she's estranged from her Marxist father, who is a dark-skinned Jamaican man. She's very close to her mother. And we know very, very well that Kamala Harris went on to become a criminal prosecutor. Kamala Harris saw the American criminal justice system, mass incarceration, the highest rate of imprisonment of any country in the world, and said, I want to get involved in that. We have video of her talking about how when she was a criminal prosecutor in the state of California, in San Francisco, in Oakland, she had a policy of locking in jail the parents of children who were truant from school.
So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco. And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned because we didn't know at the time whether I was going to have an opponent in my reelection.
There's a video of her bragging about this, and she's giggling a little bit. And she says in the video where she's giggling about locking up the parents of truant children,
I would not be standing here were it not for the education I received. And I know many of us will say the same thing.
if you listen to that statement, first of all, she's being highly unprofessional. She says, I wouldn't be anywhere without my education. What does it have to do with you, Kamala? Your job as a criminal prosecutor is to enforce the law. Your job is not to take vendettas. Your job is not to enact revenge for what was done to you in your childhood. Your job is not to draw from your personal life experiences. Your job is to enforce the law. And what good does it do? What good does it do to lock up the parents of truant children? Yes, kids should be in school. When parents aren't getting their kids to school, it's a problem. But how does it help kids, especially in low-income neighborhoods, kids from African-American communities where there's big problems in the neighborhood? How does it help those kids? How does it help them to have their parents go to jail? It doesn't help them at all. But you see, she doesn't care about helping those kids. She doesn't care about helping those kids. It's about getting revenge on those parents. You see this later. There's another clip of Kamala Harris speaking. And she talks about how, people chant at protests, build more schools, less jail.
And we run around with these signs, build more schools, less jails. Build more schools, less jails. And we walk around everywhere. Build more schools. We protest. Build more schools, less jails. Put money into education, not prisons. There's a fundamental problem with that approach, in my opinion.
It's making fun of protesters, people who march against the prison industrial complex, people who march against mass incarceration. She starts making fun of them. And she has this look of contempt on her face. Build more schools, less jails. Build more schools, less jails. And she's making fun of them. She hates protesters. She hates the movement against mass incarceration. She hates people who oppose the prison industrial complex. Why? Why do you think that is? Because her father is one of those people. Her father is a Marxist. Her father is one of those people. We don't know what happened, but she identifies protesters, people that oppose the prison industrial complex, with her father. And she speaks with utter contempt for protesters. Another great example. Kamala Harris, great example here, classic. Kevin Cooper was on death row. An African-American man, like her father, on death row, awaiting execution. And they made the decision. To do DNA evidence. DNA evidence to see if he was actually guilty of the crime. before they would kill him. Hours away from getting lethal injection. They are about to kill a man. And the governor of the state of California says, we really ought to investigate. We really ought to do some DNA evidence to see if he's guilty of the crime. And Kamala says, no, kill him. And she fights like hell to stop DNA evidence from being utilized, stop forensics tests. She wants Kevin Cooper to die. She wants to kill him, right? She's not worried about having on her conscience that she caused the death of an innocent man. She's worried that she won't be able to take someone's life. She's thrilled about the idea that she can take someone's life. She can kill someone. She's excited by it. She wants someone to die. She's salivating at the idea that she can kill Kevin Cooper. Well, that forensic evidence comes forward. Many people believe that forensic evidence shows Kevin Cooper was innocent. He didn't get the death penalty. Now, Kevin Cooper's still in prison, but she was very close to killing him. And worked hard. She did not want any forensic evidence to be there. That's an unhealthy and dangerous person. Another thing, over 1,500 people had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris because they smoked marijuana. Now, I don't smoke marijuana, but, I don't think people's lives should be destroyed. If people want to use marijuana, that's their business. It's a personal choice. But 1,500 people, that is not a small number of people. 1,500 people. 1,500 people's lives were destroyed. They got criminal records because Kamala Harris made the decision to prosecute them for lighting up a joint. Kamala Harris herself smoked marijuana. She laughs about it. She finds this to be humorous. She thinks it's funny.
Have you ever smoked?
I have.
Okay. Like
And I inhale. I did inhale.
Okay.
It was a long time ago.
What were you listening to when you was high? What was on? What song was it?
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, definitely Snoop. Tupac for sure.
That something that she destroyed people's lives, had criminal records attached to people's names. People spent time in prison. Low-income people, mostly African-American folks, low-income people, she put them in jail for something that she herself did regularly. She smoked marijuana and she laughs about it, and she destroyed the lives of 1,500 people for doing it. This is a woman without any moral compass, without any sense of fairness. And this is a very dangerous person. It gets worse than that. Right? During the wildfires in California a few years back. Right? There were these wildfires happening in California. Well, the governor of California started letting people out of jail. Kamala Harris tried to keep people in jail. Tried to keep people that were nonviolent criminals, people who smoked marijuana just like she does, nonviolent offenders in jail. She tried to keep nonviolent offenders in jail. Why? Because she said the state needed their labor to put out fires. That was the argument made by her office. No. Keep nonviolent offenders in jail because we can use their free labor. We can use their free labor to put out fires, right? Instead of having, firefighters with union protections and workplace safety. Oh, no. We can use the labor of these people that are nonviolent offenders to put out fires, so let's keep them in jail. This is not a healthy person. This is simply not a healthy person. Kamala Harris is unwell. She's an unhealthy person, right? And if you want to understand how unhealthy Kamala Harris is, you just need to understand a catchphrase of her presidential campaign.
And that little girl was me.
Right? Joe Biden, she's calling out Joe Biden. She's calling Joe Biden racist, which plenty of argument to be made there. I'm not defending Joe Biden. And she's calling out Joe Biden.
There was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day.
And immediately, her campaign website starts selling t-shirts of 10-year-old Kamala Harris. 10-year-old Kamala Harris. That little girl was me. Pictures of her 10-year-old self. Folks, something happened to little Kamala. We don't know what happened, and it was awful, whatever it was. It was a traumatizing, horrendous thing. Was she abused? Did her father, maybe cheat on her mother and have an affair and destroy their family home? Was the father beating up the mother? We don't know, right? I've never met Donald Harris. I don't know if he's a good guy. I'm just telling you that something happened. She hates her Marxist father with a passion. And that hate has translated into a desire to destroy, a desire to destroy people's lives, primarily the lives of African-American men, dark-skinned men like her father. It is translated into a desire to destroy and tear people down and harm people. It's pathological. This woman has a pathological desire to harm people, right? She, of all the jobs she could have chosen, right? Great education, went to very good schools, high-achieving student. She could have been a doctor. She could have been, she could have been a lawyer who defends people. She could have been a corporate lawyer. Oh no, she wanted desperately to get herself in a position where she could destroy people's lives, put people in jail, and in some cases, get people killed. Not a healthy person. Not a healthy person. Now, folks, just her not being healthy in and of itself isn't particularly dangerous, right? I mean, unhealthy people exist. You don't want crazy people to be running the government. You don't want people with sociopathic and cruel tendencies to be running the government. She's not a sociopath. I'll talk to you about that later. But there's something more sinister about this. Folks, I've talked about the wrecking crew and that Kamala Harris fits a certain psychological profile, right? We know that the presidents of recent history, right, they tend to have similar biographies, right? That Trump, for example, right? He had a very highly successful father, and he lived in the shadow of his highly successful father and was very defensive, very desperate to prove himself, right? And that explains the flashiness, the obsession with media appearances, the narcissism. George W. Bush, same story. Father was president. Father was CIA director. Very successful father, so he has this desperation. And just like Trump, he goes around failing in business. Very similar profile. Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, very similar life story, right? They have they never meet their father, right? Neither Barack Obama nor Bill Clinton ever met their father, right? Their fathers were out of their lives by the time they were born. They stay with the mother as stepfathers come and go. Right? They have a very close relationship with their mother. Stepfathers come and go. It's a similar pattern. Well, the pattern that has developed here with Kamala Harris fits the pattern of Amy Klobuchar, fits the pattern of Samantha Power. Samantha Power, who was Obama's UN ambassador, right? Her father was an alcoholic. Her and her mother left Ireland for the United States. He stayed in Ireland, died of an alcoholic disease. Amy Klobuchar, her father was an alcoholic who beat her mother. She didn't speak to him for years until he got sober. Amy Klobuchar, of course, becomes a criminal prosecutor. Furthermore, we know Samantha Power becomes an international prosecutor. She goes around the world making the case for war, right? What has she done her entire adult life? She's built the case for war. Fishmongers sell fish, warmongers sell war. And she sells war against Yugoslavia. She sells war against Libya. She presses. She fights like hell inside of the Obama White House, demanding that Obama intervene in Libya, destroy Libya. And is it about making life better for the people of those countries? No. Just like Kamala Harris locking up parents. Is that about helping those kids? No. It's about getting revenge. And who is the target? Powerful men, right? Gaddafi, Milosevic, powerful men. They hate powerful men they deem to be populists, right? And it's about destruction, unleashing that rage and that pent-up rage and destruction against powerful men. That's what's going on here. It's a psychological profile rooted in trauma. Amy Klobuchar, as she's locking up people in Minnesota and jailing people, is it about helping people? Is it about keeping people safe? No, it's about punishing men like her father, punishing powerful men, It's unhealthy. It's pathological, right? Destabilizing the Middle East. All right. But here's the thing. Here is the thing. Powerful forces have found these people and found their trauma and their history and found it useful. The crazier and the less stable and the less in touch with reality these people are, the more effectively manipulated they are. Right? If they want to get Samantha Power to be fired up and wanting to press Obama to invade Libya, they know exactly what to tell her. They know exactly the horror stories about Gaddafi. They can tell her, they can show her photographs. They know exactly how to push her buttons and get her to channel her traumatic rage to the destruction of Libya. The same story with Kamala Harris, right? They know exactly what buttons to push. They know exactly what buttons to push to channel her rage and her anger and get her to support the destruction of any country, right? She hates Marxists. She hates powerful men. She hates communists and socialists and left-wing activists. She hates them. So they just have to show her a picture. Look at President Xi. He's big and mean. Here's somebody he allegedly put in jail. And here's a picture of him with Marx books. Doesn't this make you mad, Kamala? She'll say, yes, all right, here's the nuclear button. Go right ahead. They know how to manipulate her. Folks, manipulating people that have trauma, it is manipulating people's PTSD. Manipulating people's PTSD is something that has been studied effectively. I mean, it is sadly, it is something that our intelligence agencies have figured out, right? And it's a way to control somebody. Folks, many people are critical of the Church of Scientology. And I'll tell you, if you watch these videos that have been leaked about the Church of Scientology, the way the psychology of the Church of Scientology works, the way their auditing works, is about manipulating trauma, right? Look up Scientology auditing. What they do is they get somebody in a room.
Have the pre-clear find an incident that he feels he can comfortably face. Any incident is okay if the pre-clear feels he can comfortably face it.
We're going to find an incident in your life of which you have an exact record. Then by sending you through it at the moment it happens several times, we're going to reduce it. Locate an incident that you feel you can comfortably face.
All right. Yeah, a meeting.
The auditor now returns the pre-clear to the incident.
They get somebody in a room and they have them recall a traumatic experience. And it's their auditing and they're holding the thing. And they're trying to relive and recall their traumatic experience. And they have them tell the story over and over again.
Stressed out. I'm thinking to myself, this stress is killing me. And I just feel like I need to lie down.
Good. Go back to the beginning and go over it. Pick up whatever additional data you can contact.
And they have them repeat the story. And they induce pain. They get the person into a state of crying and pain, and they just get the person to relive the traumatic experience as much as possible until they just become overwhelmed and their brain starts to produce endorphins and they start to calm down.
This is the end of the auditing session. The pre-clear is bright, cheerful, and the engram has erased. This is a good time to end off for today since he's really doing well.
And the idea is they tell the people that they're then healing from their traumas. That's how it works. That's what they do. But the thing is, they're not really healing. In fact, you're making the pain of that memory more and more intense. They're making it more and more intense. They're intensifying the pain. That's what they're doing. They are making it worse. And they're making that person easy to manipulate. Right? The person becomes dependent on that auditing. They need that energy rush. They need to go and relive their traumatic experiences and get that high. It provides them an emotional release. It becomes an addiction. And they think they're healing, and they're not. Their trauma is getting worse. And it's a form of mind control. And it's not just the Church of Scientology that does this. Many different scam artists, BS therapy kind of institutions have figured out how to do this. When people have PTSD, when they have pain in their past, when they have trauma, there's ways of making them relive it and making them feel like no one understands them that makes them effectively manipulated. And it It's a method that is used. It is very widely used. And the thing is, when Kamala shouts, "That little girl was me,"
And that little girl was me.
the brainwashing is working. In her mind, she's not thinking about the results of her actions. She is focusing on what she has replayed so many times. She is thinking of 10-year-old Kamala. She's got that picture of 10-year-old Kamala in her head, and the world exists between her and 10-year-old Kamala, her and what happened to her, her and how no one understands it, her, how no one understands that that little girl was her. It is narcissism. They talk about people that are narcissists. Narcissists often have traumatic experiences. They are obsessed. It causes them to pull back from other people. The term narcissist, it comes from Narcissa, right? The Greek myth of this person who saw their reflection in the water and was just so in love with their reflection that they never looked away, right? They lose the ability to notice other people, to think about other people. They have this overblown sense of self. That's narcissism. And there are different types of narcissists. But Kamala Harris is a sadistic narcissist, right? She thinks about herself, she stares at herself, and she has a particular vendetta against socialists and communists, right? We saw this during the primary when, as you know, Bernie Sanders was getting up to speak at an event where there were different folks from the party, different candidates. All of her supporters, she had all of her supporters stand up and march out of the room, making clear how much they hated Bernie Sanders, chanting, "She's smart, she's strong, with Kamala, you can't go wrong." And it was, and she said, "Oh, it was spontaneous." It wasn't spontaneous. It was sending a message. "We won't support you," de Leon. She was sending the message that we will not support you if you are the nominee. That's what she was doing. She was sending the message, "We won't support you if you were the Democratic nominee." She was making that clear. And you should watch her dancing along. She's kind of like dancing as her supporters are chanting, "She's smart, she's strong, with Kamala, we can't go wrong." Right? It's narcissism. She's in love with herself, she's in love with her own image, and she wants to kill, she wants to destroy, she wants revenge, and she's thinking about her 10-year-old self. This is a deeply unhealthy person. And the forces that want war, and the forces that want destruction, they have discovered that Kamala Harris is their person. And there are people in the government, I know this for a fact, there are people in the government apparatus who are terrified of Kamala Harris. Because they know that Kamala Harris getting back into the White House would basically be the return of the Hillary Clinton State Department. The Hillary Clinton State Department was an epic disaster. We are still living with the consequences of the Hillary Clinton State Department. The Hillary Clinton State Department turned the Arab Spring into a war in Libya, into a war in Syria, refugees, death, escalation of the war in Afghanistan, you name it. The Hillary Clinton State Department was an epic disaster. And Kamala Harris, her personality profile matches the profile of the wings of the deep state that set up shop in the Hillary Clinton State Department.
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California.
And if you're a socialist, if you're a leftist, if you're somebody who doesn't want war, you don't want destruction, furthermore, if you are opposed to a police state and mass incarceration, you don't want to see more Americans locked up, furthermore, if you are a leftist or a socialist who doesn't want to see police state repression rained down on your organizations, you should be terrified of Kamala Harris. And I tell you, she's very, very close to being the vice presidential nominee of Joe Biden.